Hello everyone, and thank you for joining me. Today I'm going to show you how I created this half-face fishy creative portrait. This was actually made with two images. One image I used for the cheek, and the other image I used for the eye. So I'm just going to do my raw adjustments on these before opening them up in Photoshop. They were shot with my Canon Rebel T5 with my 17 to 50 millimeter lens, ISO of 200, shutter speed of 100 for both, and aperture of 7.1. They were shot on a thunder gray seamless backdrop, and they were lit with one, you can see me right there, they were lit with one giant rectangular softbox right off to his right and slightly in front of him. So the first thing I'm going to do, this is the image that I used for the eye. The eye is much sharper here than it is in this image, as you can tell. So this is the image that I used for the rest of his face, and this is the image that I used for the eye. So I'm going to make adjustments to this one first, and I'm going to adjust my settings, and I'm going to pay attention to how those make the eye look. I don't really care about what they do to the rest of the photo because I just want to take this eye. And so I am going to warm it up a little bit. I'm going to add just a little bit more tint to it. I'm going to up the exposure a little. I'm going to up the highlights and down the shadows. I'm going to down the blacks. For clarity, I'm going to add 5. And then I'm going to come over here and I'm going to add 25 in my luminance. And now I'm going to come back to this image and do my raw adjustments on it. I'm going to warm him up a little bit. I'm going to leave the tint right where it's at. I'm going to up the exposure a little. Highlights, I'm going to raise. Shadows, I'm going to lower. The blacks, I'm going to lower. And clarity is 5. And luminance is 25. I am now going to control click both and open those up. So now that I have my images opened up, the first thing I am going to do is I'm going to grab my eye here. I'm going to use my elliptical marquee tool. And I'm just going to draw a circle around his eye. And then I'm going to take my move tool and I'm just going to drag it and drop it on this other image, and it does need to be resized, so I'm going to resize that. I'm going to lower the opacity so that I can line it up with the position of his eye that would be there naturally. So I need to move this, I need to move this up some. And about right there, we can see that his eyebrow is matching. I'm going to raise the opacity of that layer, and then I'm going to put a layer mask on this. I'm going to make sure that my brush hardness is set at 0. The opacity is 100. And I'm going to get rid of the hard edges around the outside. So it kind of looks like it belongs there. We still have some work to do because it's definitely lighter. I'm going to lower the opacity to 30%. And then I'm going to gently take off this part here. Okay. And let me get rid of this part of the nose. Tap that a couple more times. Let me tap that a couple more times to blend it in a little bit better. Gonna get rid of that right there. Okay. Okay. And now I'm going to merge those. I'm now going to go ahead and crop this, and we're going to crop it as a half face, a little bit more. I'm going to bring it in. He kind of looks like he's leaning, doesn't he? Let me straighten this. So let me back that back off. And then with my crop tool, I'm going to straighten it. I'm going to use my crop tool to straighten it so that I don't have to expand the edges. And let me explain to you what that means. If I use my move tool here to crop it, it's going to move it, and then we're going to have a transparent background, and then we're going to have to pull this down and pull this up. So instead, if I use my crop tool to straighten it, oh, let me redo that. Okay, so instead, if I use my crop tool to straighten it, it's going to go ahead and it's just going to keep my image rectangular so that I don't have to scale this down and scale this up and move this in. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to go ahead and use my crop tool to straighten it. Let's see, do I want his eye in the center? Typically, you would want his eye right there on the crosshairs. But I think I want his eye about right there. Okay, the first thing we are going to do after we have our image, after we have the eye replaced, after we have it straightened up and cropped, is take it into Liquify. Before I do any sharpening, any skin smoothing, I'm going to make my Liquify adjustments first. And the first thing I want to do is I want to make his eye bigger. I want to round his eyelid first. So I'm going to push that in, and then I'm going to bring that up a little bit. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my bloat tool here. I'm going to make it just big enough to where it encompasses his whole eye, and I'm going to put the center of my bloat tool to match the center of his eye, which would be his pupil. And then I'm just going to tap it a couple times. Whoops. I want to then take my pucker tool and make his pupil just a little bit smaller. Okay. I'm going to zoom out. And now we are going to, let's kind of mess his hair up a little bit. Because he's underwater, so the hair is going to be messed up. I'm just going to use my forward warp tool and pull it out. So that he looks like he's floating. Okay. I'm then going to bloat his cheek. So I'm going to come back to my bloat tool. And then I'm going to get right in the center of his cheek, and I'm going to hit the center of his cheek pretty dang hard. And then I'm going to click OK. I'm going to put a layer mask on that layer that we just created. And then with my soft black brush, oh no, I do not want to take that off of his eye. I want to back that off of his nose and his lips right here. Because we have more work to do to the lips, and then I want to get this off. I want to take it off of his ear because that is really not how his ear is shaped. So I'm going to adjust the hardness of my brush to 50%. And then I'm going to run this down the side of his face to get rid of that ear. Come back and up the hardness to 75. Okay. Just want to make sure that line there is perfect. I'm going to come back to my black brush, and I'm going to lower the hardness again all the way to 0. Oh, no, that's right. I wanted it on the eye. I need my white brush to make sure that that eye is fully there. And take my black brush and just gently paint it off of this area here. Okay. Actually, let me fix this part of his cheek. It's still, I still need to work on my masking on that a little bit more, so I'm going to put the hardness of my brush back to 75. And then I'm just going to go around here and make sure Okay. Let me get rid of this last little bit right there. Okay, I am now going to combine those and take this back into Liquify. I'm now going to work on his lips. I'm going to start with my pucker tool, and I'm going to reduce the size of his lips over here, because his lips are supposed to be pursed. So we want to move those. We want to pucker these up a little bit. Let me grab my pucker tool again. I'm going to kind of turn the corner of his mouth up a little tiny bit. Move these over.
Powering off.
Okay. Let me zoom out and see how that looks. I'm going to do a little bit more work on his cheek. Grab my bloat tool and kind of move it in just or not my bloat tool, my forward warp tool, and move it in just a little bit. And now I'm going to come back with my bloat tool. I'm going to bloat it just a little bit more. I'm going to click OK. And that looks okay to me. I'm going to take it off of the bottom of his eye right here. I'm going to do that with my black brush. I'm just going to paint the bottom of that eye back. And I don't like, I'm going to fix his eye. I don't like how you can't see all of it. There's no white here at the bottom. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select half, the upper half of his eye. I'm going to hit Control J to copy that. I'm going to come over to Edit, Transform, and I'm going to flip it vertical. And then I'm going to move it down. I'm going to zoom in. And I'm going to resize it so that the edges of his eye match. I'm going to click OK. I'm going to put a layer mask on that. And then with my black brush, I'm going to go ahead and I want a soft black brush. I'm going to go ahead and paint around that. I'm going to paint off those hard edges. I just want a little bit of white to show at the bottom because it does not now. Whoops. You want to make sure that you're on your layer mask. I'm going to turn that layer back off, and I'm going to take my layer back into Liquify. I'm going to zoom in, and then with my forward warp tool, I'm going to grab the eye and pull it down. Okay, and then click OK. Now let me turn this layer back on. Let's make it bigger. Let's go back to our black brush. Take that off. Because we do want there to be a circle there. But we do want that white to be just at the bottom. We want his eye to be a complete circle, and without this, it's not. Okay. Okay, and now we can see all of his eye. Let me zoom in real quick. I'm going to change the hardness of my brush to 35%. I'm just going to run it right along there to kind of bring back some of those lower eyelashes. Okay, and then going to combine those, and now I'm going to come in and I'm going to fix the minor issues I see wrong with his skin. I see a couple little bats in the cave there. I see some things on his lips that I need to fix. So I'm going to first grab my spot healing brush tool, and I'm just going to tap that over the areas that I see. I'm going to switch to my clone stamp tool. I'm going to sample an area right by that and fix it, because the last one, the spot healing, kind of misshapened his nose, and I don't want that. Okay, now I'm going to switch back to my spot healing tool and finish up. Okay, so now that that is done, I'm now going to do my sharpening. And I'm going to do my eye first. I'm going to sharpen his eye with my eye sharpening action. I'm going to paint that on. Then I'm going to lower the opacity to 30 and paint that over his eyelashes there. And then I am going to play that eye sharpening action one more time, and I'm just going to sharpen up my whole image like that. I'm going to lower the opacity to 15%. And then I'm going to invert that to apply it to my whole image. And now he is sharpened and ready to go. I am then going to smooth his skin, and I'm going to do that with my skin smoothing action. I do not want to get that on his lips or his eye. I am then going to warm him up. I'm going to do that with my skin warming action. Just going to warm him up a little bit. I also do not want to get that on his lips or eye. Okay. I'm going to raise the opacity on this layer to about 35. Okay. I am now going to change the color of my background to kind of an aquamarine color, so it looks like he is actually in the fish tank or underwater, and I'm going to do that with a new adjustment layer, selective color. I'm going to make sure that I am in my neutral channel because the gray is a neutral color. I'm going to bump up the cyan all the way. Let's down the yellows a little bit. Okay. I am then going to invert that layer, and I'm going to paint it back on the background. Let me mask him really quick so that that's easier. I'm going to grab my quick selection tool. Select and mask, and then we're just gonna kind of grab some of this hair that's out here. I want to go to my refine edge brush tool. I want to make sure my smart radius is selected. Smooth, I'm gonna add about 2, and that's it. And then just gonna go around the outside of his hair. Down here, I'm going to change the output settings to new layer with mask, and I'm going to click OK. And then now there is my mask. And I'm just going to control click on my mask just like that. I'm going to come up here to select and invert so that it selects the areas outside of what I selected because I selected him. I don't want the selective color layer on him. I want it on the background, which is why I inverted that layer. So I'm going to come back up to my selective color layer. And with my white brush, I'm just going to paint that on. I am going to lower the opacity a little bit. Okay. And then I want to lighten that layer. So I'm going to go to Layer, New Adjustment Layer, Curves, and click OK. I'm going to drag this up a little. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a clipping mask so that it is just on our selective color layer. So all we did was just lighten that background up just a little tiny bit. And now we're going to add some color to his eye. And I'm going to do that with a color balance layer. I'm going to add some cyan here. I'm going to add some green about there. And then I am going to add some blue. I am then going to invert that layer and then paint it on the iris only. I am going to change the blending mode of that layer to screen, and I'm going to lower the opacity. I am then going to come back to my eye sharpening action, and I'm going to add some detail here with my detail action. I'm going to use my black brush first. I'm going to make sure the hardness is set at 0, opacity 100, and then I'm just going to start painting over the dark parts in his eye. I'm going to get that ring that's on the outside. I'm going to grab his pupil, and then I'm going to get these dark spots in the iris. I am then going to grab my white brush and grab the lighter parts of his eye. Make sure to grab the catch light. And all we're doing is we're just adding some detail. Okay. So there we go. Okay. I am now going to lighten him up just a little bit, and I'm going to do that with a curves layer. Just going to pull my midtones up just there. I'm going to invert that, and then with my white brush, I'm just going to paint that over him. I'm now going to darken this a little bit, and I'm going to leave that on the whole image, and then with my black brush, I'm going to come down and paint it off of the highlights. I'm going to grab the catch light. I'm going to get the tip of his nose. I'm going to get underneath his nose right here. And grab his cheek. A couple spots on his lips. And his chin right there. I'm going to grab the lighter parts of his hair, the corner of his eye, right under his eyebrow, his forehead. I'm going to grab some of his neck too and his shoulder. I'm then going to lower the opacity of my brush to 30, and then grab a couple more of the lighter spots, and all that does is it just helps it blend in, gives it a little more extra depth, which is what we want. Okay. Okay. I want to darken it just a little bit more. I'm just gonna pull these over just a little bit. And then with my black brush, still at 30%, I'm just gonna tap it a couple times. Over him. Okay, and then I'm going to raise it back up to 100 and take it fully off of the catch light, completely off the tip of his nose, underneath his nose right here, this little area here, his lip right there, his cheek, and his neck. And maybe the hair. Okay. I'm then going to come back and add another curves layer, and now I'm going to raise those. I'm going to invert that. And then with my white brush, I'm going to paint on the highlights. I'm not going to do this part of his nose because that part of his nose is already pretty light. Okay. I'm now going to grab my fish, and I have all of my all of the PNG files open already. So I'm just going to go and I'm going to grab my fish here and bring him back over to my image. And there's my fish. Let me place him. I want him equal with his eye. Let me move him over a little bit. Okay. Let me move him over a little bit more. Okay, so we don't need him anymore. Let's get rid of him. I'm now going to open up get my other fishies. I'm just going to bring them over and drop and drag them wherever I want. So we got fish 1. I'm going to close that. And now fish 2. I'm going to grab it and come and drop it. I'm going to close that because I no longer need that open. And fish 3. I'm going to bring that over. Let me put those there. Let me grab these little guys. I just rearrange them real quick. I'm going to adjust the opacity on them. Lower those. Lower those. And lower those. Lower those just a little bit more. Okay. And I'm going to close my fish 3. I'm then going to come and add my fish bubbles. I'm just going to grab those and, whoops, make sure I actually get on it. Okay. And I'm going to put those in place. gonna make them coming out of his mouth just there. I no longer need those, so I'm going to close those. And he is underwater, so the light is going to be pretty harsh. So I want to dodge and burn him a little bit more. So I'm going to do another curves layer. And I want to darken my image. And then with my black brush, I want to stamp it off of him in just a couple places. Okay. I now want to burn him a little bit more. I'm going to pull that over. I'm going to invert that, and then with my white brush this time, I'm going to put that over some of these darker areas here. Not many. I'm going to lower the opacity of my brush to 30%. I'm going to lower the opacity of that layer. Okay. I am then going to come and grab my seaweed and pull it over. I'm going to get rid of that because I don't need that open any longer. I am now going to come and grab my window and place it. And this can be resized, which it needs to be, so I'm just going to pull it up just like that. And now, since we have our window in place, you can see the seaweed sticking out here. You can see the color. So what we're going to need to do is we're going to go back to these layers. I'm going to start with my seaweed layer here. I'm going to put a layer mask on it, and then with my black brush at 100% opacity, I'm going to take the seaweed off. So there's the seaweed. Don't have to worry about the seaweed. Now I'm going to come back down to my selective color layer. I'm going to paint that off because we want it to look like there is a wall there. We do not want it the same color as the background. And then I want to come back up and grab that layer of fish right there and move it over so I can see them just a little bit. There they are. And I'm actually going to put a layer mask on this. I'm going to soften up that edge there. I'm going to soften up this edge here. Okay. I now want to add his bubbles, so the boy bubbles here. It can be girl, either one. I'm going to move them over and put them in place. We can change the blending mode on those. I like hard light. I think that looks the best. Let me close these PNGs here. Okay. I am now going to come back. I'm going to go to Layer, New Adjustment Layer, Curves. I'm going to click OK. I'm going to darken this a little by pulling it over, and then I'm going to lift it up to about 10. And then with my black brush, I'm just going to paint that off of him right there. I'm then going to do another curves layer. I'm going to raise up. Let's see, what do we want to do? Do we want to make it darker? Or do we want to make it lighter? I'm actually going to make him just a little tiny bit lighter, so I'm going to invert that. And then with my white brush, I'm going to run that down, just like that. And then I'm done. So essentially we started with this image and we ended with this one. From there to there. Thank you so much for joining me.